You check your phone. Nothing new. The house is in order. But your chest isn't. You're 42. Independent. Successful. And tired. It's not neediness. It's prolonged silence. It's not desperation. It's a very specific emptiness. You've done therapy. Read the books. Rebuilt yourself. So why does it still hurt? You don't accept just any man. You never did. But the ones you choose always leave. Emotionally unavailable men. Conflicted. Charming at first. Distant at the end. And you repeat, I just want someone mature. Yet the pattern repeats. Different faces. Maybe the problem isn't your intelligence. Maybe it's deeper. Invisible. Old. What if you're not choosing men, but trying to resolve a story that started long before them? You want love. But what if, without realizing it, you keep choosing the kind that confirms an old wound? And what if the 5 traps you call bad luck are actually unconscious loyalties? Are you ready to see that? Or would you rather keep calling it coincidence? You are not failing at love. You are repeating something that was never closed. And it has a name. It is not bad luck. It is not a cruel fate. It is an unconscious pattern. It is active emotional memory. And it is still directing your choices. Carl Jung called it the animus, the inner image of the masculine, formed long before your first romance, created in early bonds, in early silences, in early disappointments, in early attempts to be seen. That is where it began. Maybe your father was present, but emotionally distant. Maybe he was strong, but unreachable. Or maybe absent. And you learned to wait. You learned to try harder. You learned that love requires endurance. Or maybe he was unpredictable. Unstable moods. Uncertain approval. Conditional affection. And you became alert. Hyper-aware. Overly competent. Just to never be left. Without realizing it, you recorded a rule. Love must be earned. Love requires endless patience. Love comes with tension. Love is not calm. Love is effort. Love is expectation. Love is proof. And your unconscious stored that as absolute truth, as a safe map, even if painful, because the brain prefers familiarity, even when it hurts, even when it exhausts you, even when it repeats abandonment. You grow up, you study, build a career, go to therapy, learn about boundaries, learn about self-worth, learn about value. But the unconscious does not respond to degrees. It responds to familiarity, to what feels like home, to what vibrates as known, to what activates old sensations. And sometimes home is not love. It is just emotional memory. It is repetition. It is the past disguised as destiny. You do not choose unavailable men out of naivety. You choose them because something inside recognizes that climate, recognizes the distance, recognizes the tension, recognizes the waiting, recognizes the effort, recognizes the challenge, and calls it chemistry. But here is the most important part. You are not broken. You are conditioned. And conditioning can be rewired. What hurts is not lack of love. It is loyalty to an old story. You are still seeking an ending. And maybe you are finally ready to end it. You say you want stability, but you feel bored when it appears. You say you want presence, but you are drawn to distance. You say you want peace, but something in you ignites in chaos. This is not contradiction. It is repetition. You enter a new relationship. It begins intensely. Deep conversations, instant chemistry, subtle promises, unspoken plans. You feel rare connection, and you call it fate. But look closely. He's too busy, emotionally closed, fresh out of something unresolved, confused about what he wants, marked by unhealed wounds, almost available, never fully present. And you understand. You are empathetic. You respect his timing. You wait for maturity. You believe in his potential. You offer stability. You give consciously. And begin adjusting yourself. You become overly understanding. Too strong. Too patient. Too rational. You convince yourself this is adult love. No drama. No demands. No neediness. But underneath there is anxiety. You check your phone. Analyze his tone. Interpret silences. Calculate responses. Control reactions. Lower expectations. And call it maturity. Here is the invisible cycle. You try to win someone emotionally distant. Because once long ago you tried that before. You try to prove your worth. Because once you had to. You try to be enough. Because once you were not sure you were. And your unconscious calls this purpose. But it is not purpose. It is repetition. You are not living a new love. You are rewriting an old one. Different face. Different name. Different story. Same ending. When it ends you think, again. You promise to choose differently. But you choose the same emotional profile. New packaging. Different words. Identical chemistry. And the cycle restarts. This is not weakness. It is unconscious loyalty. You are loyal to an older version of yourself. The girl who needed to be chosen. The teenager waiting for validation. The woman who confused intensity with love. Until this is seen, it will keep happening. And what comes next is where it truly hurts. If you are recognizing yourself here, it is not by accident. This channel exists for aware women who want to break patterns, not repeat stories. Click the button right now and subscribe because each video is a step toward choosing with consciousness, not from wounds. You don't have to go through this alone. And what's coming next may change the way you love forever. You start strong, grounded, where you promise it will be different. But slowly you adjust, lower expectations, tolerate absences, and call it maturity. You convince yourself adult love is calm. No demands, no drama, no neediness. You are proud of not pressuring, not asking, not depending, but something inside begins to shrink. You wait for replies, wait for clarity, wait for consistency, wait for commitment. And while you wait, you adapt, become more understanding, more rational, more silent. And the silence grows heavy. You don't complain, but you feel it. You don't confront, but you analyze. You don't demand, but you ache. Alone. The exhaustion does not come from him. It comes from the constant effort to stay composed, to appear calm, to be the mature one, not to scare him, not to overwhelm him, not to be too much. And you slowly disappear. The loneliness is not just his absence. It is the absence of you. You abandon yourself first, then feel abandoned. You silence yourself first, then feel silence. You over-adjust, then feel empty. This is where it hurts, because you see it. It wasn't only bad luck. It wasn't only poor choice. It was subtle self-abandonment, constant adjusting, fear of losing. Before you even had him, then comes the false solution. I'll love harder. I'll be more patient. I'll prove I'm different. Or the opposite extreme. I don't need anyone. I'll shut down. All men are the same. But loving harder doesn't fix it. Pleasing doesn't fix it. Closing off doesn't fix it. Ignoring need doesn't fix it. Overthinking doesn't fix it. Waiting for him to change doesn't fix it. Becoming cold doesn't fix it. Because the problem was never intensity. The problem was fighting for someone who was never truly available. Trying to cross a distance that was never yours to cross. Fighting for a place that was never offered. And while you fought for him, you lost your own ground. And that has to stop. What comes next changes the direction. You don't need to become another woman. You need to stop abandoning yourself. Healing doesn't start with choosing better. It starts with choosing yourself first. Before chemistry. Before promises. Before projection. Before hope. First action. Observe the pattern before acting. Do not dive into early intensity. Wait for behavior. Wait for consistency. Wait for alignment between words and actions. Chemistry is not character. And urgency is not connection. Your nervous system confuses intensity with safety. But real safety is predictable. It is stable. It is clear. It is calm. It does not trigger constant anxiety. It does not require interpretation. It does not demand over-effort. So slow down. When you feel instant euphoria, pause. When you feel urgency, observe. When you fear losing him, breathe. Healthy love does not vanish in a week. It does not evaporate with boundaries. It is not threatened by clarity. It remains. Second action. Stop adapting to fit. Something bothers you, say it. Something is missing, name it. Something hurts, acknowledge it. Do not over-explain. Do not over-soften. Do not over-rationalize. Be honest. Emotionally available men do not run from clarity. They are not intimidated by boundaries. They do not disappear when you express need. They respond. They adjust. They build with you. They sustain presence. They stay. If he pulls away when you stand firm, that is not loss. It is revelation. It is not rejection. It is redirection. It is not failure. It is your filter working. And that is maturity. You do not need to convince anyone to stay. You do not need to prove your worth. You do not need to compete with silence. You do not need to fight for attention. You do not need to earn love. Love is not a prize. Not a test. Not a battle. What you call loneliness sometimes is withdrawal from an old pattern. Emotional detox. Space for something different to emerge. The emptiness before renewal. The silence before clarity. The pause before conscious choice. And you are learning to hold that space. But there is still something missing. Something beyond psychology. Deeper. Quieter. Eternal. And this is where everything shifts. You thought you were simply choosing the wrong men. But maybe you were repeating an old wound. And God never intended to keep you trapped in cycles. He does not work in repetition. He works in renewal. He works in restoration. He works in silent new beginnings. Even when you cannot see it, there is a forgotten promise. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Isaiah 43 verses 18 to 19. This is not about erasing memory. It is about breaking patterns. It is about refusing to turn old pain into permanent destiny. It is about allowing the new. Maybe you turned survival into identity, strength into armor, independence into walls, discernment into constant defense. And God never asked you to close your heart to stay safe. He asked you to trust while you grow, to mature without hardening, to discern without isolating. It was not rejection. It was redirection. It was not delay. It was protection. It was not abandonment. It was rescue from something that would not sustain you whole. You call it failure. God calls it filtering. You wanted it to work. But God wanted it to be healthy. You wanted intensity. You wanted peace. You wanted quick answers. You wanted strong character. You wanted someone who stayed. You wanted someone who remained. Loneliness is not punishment. Sometimes it is alignment. It is the space where patterns break. It is where illusions die. It is where awareness is born. It is where you relearn how to love yourself without fear. It is where God works in silence. Even when everything feels still. Maybe the pain did not come to reduce you, but to awaken you. Maybe the cycle was not punishment, but discernment training. Maybe every almost love was hidden protection. Maybe every goodbye was invisible mercy. Maybe every hard night was preparation for something not yet arrived. God is not repeating your story. He is interrupting patterns. He is not delaying your love. He is maturing your choice. He is not denying companionship. He is building clarity. He is not ignoring your prayers. He is rearranging your path. And here is the shift. You no longer need to conquer love. You need to recognize when it is healthy. You do not need to prove worth. You need to remember you are already whole. You do not need to chase. You need to LK with discernment. And trust that the new has already begun. You are not the woman who fails at love. You are the woman awakening. It is not delay. It is emotional maturity unfolding. It is not permanent loneliness. It is transition. It is not constant rejection. It is refinement of choice. You started this video thinking it was bad luck. Maybe you were too demanding, too closed, too independent. But now you see differently. The pattern was not coincidence. It was unconscious. And now it has been exposed. When you see the pattern, it loses power. When you name the wound, it begins to heal. When you understand repetition, you interrupt the cycle. When you choose yourself first, you change your emotional destiny. You no longer need to chase almost. You do not need to negotiate the basics. You do not need to translate silence. You do not need to compete with absence. You do not need to prove your worth. You do not need to shrink. You do not need to accept crumbs. You were not born for that. Healthy love does not trigger constant fear. It does not activate chronic insecurity. It does not create desperate urgency. It activates peace. It activates safety. It activates stability. It activates clarity. And you will recognize it. Maybe you are still alone today, but you are not lost. Maybe the house is quiet, but your heart is clearer. Maybe the nights are long, but they are no longer confusing. Maybe love has not arrived, but you have arrived to yourself. And that changes everything. Because now you do not seek intensity. You seek consistency. You do not seek validation. You seek reciprocity. You do not seek pretty promises. You seek real presence. You do not seek to be chosen. You choose together. You did not lose love. You gained awareness. You did not lose time. You gained discernment. You did not lose opportunities. You gained emotional filters. You did not lose men. You lost patterns. And perhaps the greatest transformation is not finding someone. It is stopping self-abandonment, holding your boundaries, trusting your perception, walking in peace, sleeping without anxiety, waking whole, knowing you can change your destiny. Loneliness does not disappear overnight. Transforms. From pain into space. From emptiness into awareness. From anxiety into fertile silence. From fear into faith. From waiting into preparation. And from repetition into renewal. You began with doubt. You end with clarity. And clarity is freedom. And free. Dom is peace. And peace is the soil where healthy love grows. Not from need. Not from fear. But from conscious choice. And that is redemption. If this message resonated with you, subscribe right now to our channel. Here you don't get empty promises. You get clarity, discernment, and emotional peace. Each video is a step toward loving without abandoning yourself. You deserve healthy love, but first you deserve peaceful nights. And this journey begins with awareness. That if you made it to the end of this video, write in the comments, "I choose to break patterns." By declaring this, you activate awareness and close invisible cycles. May God strengthen your clarity and guard your heart in your next choices. May peace replace anxiety in your nights. And may the new begin this very week.